My name is Jeffrey Onganga. I'm the head of media and communications at the Pan-African Parliament. I think it's important for me to start by giving an overview of what the Pan-African Parliament is. The Pan-African Parliament is the legislative organ of the African Union. The African Union is a continental body for Africa, and with the membership of 55 member states. I also think it's important for me to give an idea as to how the Pan-African Parliament works. Currently, we have 5 members from each of the member states represented in the Pan-African Parliament. Those members are selected by the national legislatures, as long as the 5 members selected respect certain criteria, including gender representation, also political diversity. So opposition and majority need to be represented, delegations sent to the Pan-African Parliament. I also think it is important to note that the Pan-African Parliament holds 4 statutory meetings a year, where decisions are made or legislation is formulated. Those are that we call committee meetings and plenary sessions. So we have in March, in August, meetings of the committees of the Pan-African Parliament. We have 11 committees. And then in May and October, members of Parliament meet in plenary sessions to take resolutions and make recommendations to the Assembly of the African Union. Lastly, just as a background to the Pan-African Parliament, it is important to note that as it stands, the Pan-African Parliament plays an advisory and a consultative role to the African Union as a whole. In 2014, a new protocol of the Parliament was adopted by heads of state and government. That protocol is meant to give full legislative powers to the Pan-African Parliament, which means that the Parliament is capable of making laws for the entire continent. Right now, the Parliament is in the business of making model laws that are then reprised and utilized as a framework by member states. But the Parliament is also, in the meantime, while providing advisory and consultative, let's call it services to the African Union and providing these model laws, is still also advocating for the ratification of this protocol, which requires 28 member states to ratify. Right now, there are 12 that have ratified and 16 more are needed. In the meantime, what the Pan-African Parliament really does is to bring together members of Parliament from the entire continent, share experiences, and make sure that problems that are discussed at the African Union level come from the aspirations of the people, the concerns of the people, and that the African Union really, based on its agenda, which is the framework towards Africa we want, Agenda 2063, really makes decisions based on what the people really want and what the people want to take Africa. And this is why this Parliament is critical in doing its work. Now, from March 2020, like the rest of the world, Africa was affected by the coronavirus pandemic, as you know. And I think that forced many organizations around the world to change the way business is conducted. And I think it's important to note that parliaments are different kind of organizations. Parliament operate differently from other bodies, because parliaments are representations of the people. Parliament are actually supposed to be transparent and ensuring that business conducted is accessible, is visible, and also has a public support and confidence. So that's why I think many parliaments around the world have tried to adjust to the new normal, how to actually conduct business, making sure that it adheres to the health protocol as directed by authorities everywhere. especially with lockdowns caused by the coronavirus. I think parliaments are trying to adapt to new ways. The Pan-African Parliament specifically, I think we've looked at this as both a challenge, but also an opportunity. Because I think what the coronavirus pandemic has done is given us an opportunity to accelerate and to speed up our digital transformation. It's really placed us in a position where we felt we did not have a choice. South Africa, which is the host country to the Pan-African Parliament, very early on in March 2020, instituted a general lockdown, which means that our parliamentarians could not come to South Africa like they've always done to hold meetings. Because most on all the meetings that the Pan-African Parliament has held over the years since it was established in 2004 have been conducted physically. They've never been online meetings or virtual meetings. So it meant that with South Africa closing borders, South Africa having restrictions on the number of people allowed to gather, we needed to look at other ways. And I think this is also important to note that the Pan-African Parliament, being an organ of the African Union, depends on funding from member states to effectively deliver on its mandate. And what has happened to the entire world has also happened to Africa. Economies were badly impacted by the pandemic. So it meant that the contribution from member states to enable the African Union as a whole to function properly, and also the Pan-African Parliament particularly to go on about its business, was clearly affected and reduced. So it then became a priority for us as a secretariat to find new ways and to propose a new path forward as to how our parliamentarians are able to then gather and deliberate on the issues facing the peoples of Africa. It then meant that our IT team had to, as it was obviously planned prior to the pandemic, but things were not really taking off. But our IT team had to make sure that our facilities were upgraded with high-end internet connectivity. We needed to make sure that we as a secretariat were able to continue having meetings online to test the way we're able to interact before we actually were able to bring in members of parliament. So in addition to the upgrade of internet, then we moved to, like many organizations, to Zoom and Teams to hold our meetings. And then once we were able to gain enough confidence from the process of gathering, then we started holding these meetings with members of parliament, committee meetings online, which really were very surprisingly efficient and a good way for them to obviously start deliberating. But obviously we encountered challenges, because as you know, when you're moving into digital transformation, you need to take into account the four key aspects. That's technology, that's data, that's the process, and that's the organizational change around it. And I think while we were putting all the resources into technology, ensuring that we gathered the data and that the process was laid out, I think the change management was very difficult to manage, because even from our own members of staff, I think they were reluctant to move and to adopt a new normal, let alone our members of parliament, because you know in Africa we have countries that progress on different levels. The technology in South Africa is clearly different from the technology used in Burkina Faso, for instance. So a member of parliament in South Africa can easily get on Zoom and Teams and you know and other platforms to actually attend and participate in a meeting. It could be more difficult from a member of parliament from Burkina Faso or Guinea to participate in the same meeting because of some, you know, issues in a micro environment, also related to network connectivity, related to high-speed internet. So we had to find a way to accommodate everyone, which obviously, as you understand, was never easy. But we working together with our headquarters in Addis Ababa, were able to propose solutions. For instance, to roll out some of our cloud solutions in a phased manner. We started, but we're providing training in Microsoft Office 365 to members of staff and also members of parliament. We held several training meetings with our members of parliament for them to first understand the basics of virtual meetings, but also to be comfortable with moving forward with how we're able to conduct business in the future. But I think the decision now needed to be made after we held about 6 to 7 committee meetings online. Yes, there were challenges, but I think once it became clear that this was going to be the new normal, and that even going beyond 2020 and 2021, budgets were going to be affected, and that perhaps an opportunity had just arrived in terms of how we are going to interact. Instead of conducting missions all over the continent, perhaps doing it online was going to be the new way. Then the decision was made at the leadership level to just transform digitally, to lead a digital transformation that will enable the Pan-African Parliament to really move into a different space. Now, I have to say that this is still ongoing because it entails investment. It obviously demands time from our side and the side of parliamentarians. Working from home for many of our staff is a new thing. Now, as you know, as we are moving to the digital space with Parliament, what is critical is voting. What is critical is voting, because in parliaments we vote on laws, we vote on motions, we vote most importantly on not most importantly, as one of the key elements is voting on the leadership of the parliament. In 2021, in May 2021, this year, the Bureau of the Pan-African Parliament, the Bureau's term will come to an end. A new Bureau needs to be elected, which means that an election will take place. Now, over the years, these elections have taken place physically. And the concern of our members of parliament, for the most part wanting to be candidates to this election, is how do you conduct an election virtually and making sure that really it is not only transparent, but also fair to candidates, because this is something that is new. So it has been our task since last year to make sure that using this platform that I've noted earlier, that we are able to conduct online voting for our members of parliament and in electing a new bureau, but also giving confidence to these members that this can happen in a manner that provides enough elements for them to believe in the process. So we are, while we are waiting for May 2021 to arrive, we've already embarked on many trials. We have already started the process of conducting mock elections, and our committee meetings are meeting online, really, because committee meetings, like many parliaments, they prepare the work of the plenary sessions. And I think while we still have many people hesitating, many members of parliament hesitating, I think we are moving forward smoothly with incorporating the aspect of digital transformation into the work of the Pan-African Parliament. Because today we are able to get members to share things as basic as sharing documents, making presentations, editing documents online, providing feedback, receiving. Those are the things that they didn't think were possible, but today we are able to do it. And I think this is only the beginning. As maybe an example, the African Union conducted fresh elections in February, actually, beginning of February, which saw the re-election of a chairperson of the commission and an election of commissioners of the African Union Commission. So we have commissioners of human resources and education, we have trade and industry, we have peace and security, and so on. So that new team was renewed, and for the first time, that election was conducted online. And we at the Pan-African Parliament, as a Pan-African Parliament team of IT and communication, we work with our colleagues in Addis Ababa to see how they were going to implement it, and obviously use that as a model to transfer and also move forward with the way we are going to be conducting our own elections. So it worked well. This election was done by heads of state. The heads of state elect the chairperson of the African Union Commission, so they were able to vote online, and it was a success in terms of the results, and it came out, and easily they were able to do it from the comfort of the different offices in respective countries. So now, obviously, we are in that phase of moving forward. Now, digital transformation, obviously, it is a process. It talks not just to us as members of the Secretariat, and also to members of Parliament who do all the work and produce legislation and model laws, but it also talks to the delivery to the general public and how we are able to service the general public. Now, before, obviously, people will be invited to come and participate in the parliamentary process here in South Africa. People were obviously given access, because this is a parliament of the people of Africa, so anyone could come and attend the proceedings. Now that we have these restrictions of people working from home, or the fact that we are not going to be holding many meetings physically at the parliament headquarters here in Midrand, and the fact that obviously there's a decision from the head of the secretariat that all meetings this year will be held online. We also had to think of how best can we, in our digital transformation process, service the citizens of Africa so they can also participate and virtually see what is going on in their parliament. And I think that's how we're able to through the different webinars that we've held, tried many elements, many stages, inviting members of the public to make submissions in seminars, but also obviously as you hold this deliberations you're not going to invite the whole continent to make submissions. Not everyone also wants to make submissions. Some people also just want to follow the proceedings and just see what is going on. So we've made provisions for citizens and stakeholders who really want to participate in the work of Parliament to take part, whether it's Zoom and team meetings, to be given access. I mean, obviously, we use Zoom when we have these big webinars, these big meetings that need to accommodate a lot of people, and then we invite third parties and other stakeholders to come and make recommendations. But what we've really done this year is to improve our live streaming. Our live streaming on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube, making sure that everything we do is live streamed to our audience across the continent on our platform, so that they can follow, obviously, the work that we do. And I think so far the feedback has been good. The process is underway. We are doing more upgrades. We are getting people to adopt the new way and to be comfortable really going forward. But you know, obviously, like I mentioned earlier, maybe I'll you know try and conclude with this is. We are not under any illusion that this is going to go smoothly all the time. As we hold meetings, we still have a few challenges. You know, a member of parliament forgetting to mute and unmute, or a member of parliament attending a meeting in an environment that is noisy and you know and with people walking around them. We still have difficulties because we've put together guidelines on how to participate in a meeting online without any disruptions. Many of our members of parliament, especially those of a certain age, still have difficulties perhaps coming to term with the new normal, but also adopting those basic practices on how to adopt. We are still trying, we are pushing, but we know that this is going to be a process. But the fact is, virtual meetings are here to stay, you know, going forward now, what we are doing as this pandemic eases up and moves to a different stage, and perhaps a less dangerous stage, is we are exploring hybrid conferencing solutions, which will be able to accommodate two types of audiences. The audience that's comfortable with technology, that's comfortable working from wherever they are, and the second audience is the audience that's still finding it difficult to adapt to change, and perhaps prefer to be in the chamber of the Pan-African Parliament and attend meetings. Now, you know, as we look into the solutions, we also see different products coming into the fray. We're looking at, obviously, into the future, and we're seeing that different solutions will be offered, and we are open-minded, and I think we have a green light from the leadership to explore all those avenues, and to make sure that we adopt a style, but also the technology that goes with the way we as a Pan-African Parliament work. The reassuring thing really is that in Africa as a whole, because the specificity with the Pan-African Parliament, that it doesn't work in isolation. We work with all parliaments in Africa. And what we've noticed with satisfaction is that these parliaments in Africa are also moving full swing into digital transformation mode. And because we're able to interact with them through online, through virtual platforms. Now, parliaments in many countries, parliaments in Malawi, in Zambia, in Nigeria, in Ghana, are voting online. In South Africa, hybrid has become the new way for quite some time. Um, so I think as we are moving from Pan-African Parliament, we are liaising with parliaments around the continent, and we are seeing this change. Obviously, the challenges remain the same. There are still a number of our parliamentarians not understanding perhaps the ins and outs, but that is obviously part of the game, if I can put it that way. You are always going to have people that do not come to the party very easily or at the same pace as everyone else. But the reassurance is that in Africa we are seeing this trend of our parliaments are able to do voting online. Our parliaments are able to conduct hearings online. Our parliaments are able to really do the business of parliament, the core business of parliament, online without having to spend a lot of budgets in flying people in and out. And I think if we continue with this trend, it's clear that we are moving into a new space. That the irony is that this was facilitated mostly by the pandemic. Now, the pandemic in itself was negative. Was negative because of number of people we've lost through this virus, because of number of jobs lost through the virus, because of the way of life that has changed. Now, and that is something that we regret, and I think that has affected us on so many levels. Now, the other side of the situation, obviously, as I said earlier, is that it's given us an opportunity to explore new solutions and how we can really work virtually and still stick to the core business of Parliament. Because that's the challenge. How do you move online? How do you move to digital, and making sure that the core business of what the Parliament is all about remains intact and remains satisfactory to all stakeholders involved in the process of a parliamentary of parliamentary work. And from a communications perspective, really, it's been easier for us to get media to interact and to participate in parliament proceedings. It has been easier really for us to, because before we will issue in the invitation and select countries depending on the meetings for media to come and cover the parliament and its work. Today, everyone in Africa, every journalist in Africa can attend our meetings and participate and cover our meetings, and that for us is a win. So once again, virtual meetings are here to stay, and we welcome them. But digital transformation, which involves and really technology and also the talent, really needs to be embraced by leadership of parliaments around the continent, and we are encouraged by what we are seeing so far. Thank you very much.